What is up guys, Andy Forresty Runner here, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my first impressions on the Saucony KINVARA 11. That's 6 miles done and dusted in the Saucony KINVARA 11. Today I'm going to be giving you guys my first impressions of this shoe, but of course before that we'll go through a quick technical specification just so you guys can get a bit of a better feel about the shoe and find out where it might slot in to your running shoe lineup. So if you're excited for today's video guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and without further ado, let's get into the technical side. A lot of you guys know I'm rebuilding my running shoe lineup for 2020, and of course we started off with the New Balance 1080 version 10. That's certainly doing well at the moment, covering a lot of the easier miles, some of the longer runs, but we needed something now to jump into place to cater for those shorter, sharper, speedier sessions where we want something a little bit snappier and a little bit more lightweight to cater for those intervals, those reps, and that sort of thing. And I look no further than the Saucony KINVARA 11. This is a lightweight, breathable shoe produced by Saucony, which is geared up for road running / racing. You could of course use it for racing. Weighing in my size, which is a UK size 13 at 292 grams, which is 10.3 ounces. I know a lot of you guys will think, gosh, let's tip the 10 ounce marker, but you've got to bear in mind I have relatively big feet, so that's quite lightweight for me, bearing in mind the New Balance 1080 version 10 is over 12 ounces in my size. I certainly do notice the weight difference in this shoe. This is a 4mm heel to toe drop, 28.5mm in the heel, 24.5mm in the forefoot. Again, so a nice 4mm drop there. And what we'll do today is we'll go work our way from the heel all the way down the lacing system, across this mesh upper, talk about the midsole, the outsole, and then I will give you my thoughts on how the shoe went. So in terms of this, it has quite a rigid heel counter, very plush around here, which is quite nice. Considering it's quite a lightweight shoe, I'm quite surprised at the volume of material in this heel counter area, but it certainly is nice and rigid. There's no sort of give there, there's no flex, there's certainly no heel slippage I found. So my foot sits nicely in there. And what I would call quite a plush tongue. I don't know if you can see that, but right here, it's quite a thick tongue here, more of something I'm used to when I run in Asics. And it is a gusseted tongue. I can see in here we've got two elastic bits countering the tongue to, sticking the tongue down basically to either side of the inside of the material around the midsole to hug your foot to hopefully give you that snug feeling, similar to the New Balance 1080 version 10. And a very simplistic lacing system, which I really do like. I don't like anything fancy when it comes to laces, just some eyelets. The eyelet chain is simple and some laces. The laces on this shoe that get delivered with the shoe in my size are a little bit short, so bear that in mind when you are buying the shoe. The laces are short. I am tempted to change the laces at the moment, but nothing fancy, just gets the job done. We then have this breathable mesh upper which wraps around the shoe. I think it's a two-piece upper from what I can see. This is just a guess, but as you can see, this thin blue fabric here looks like a welded overlay which connects onto this white rigid heel counter area which runs from here all the way around to here. And from the blue here, it then connects all the way around the top and all the way back up here. So I think it's a two-piece upper. And this is, to be fair, some nice breathable mesh upper. It's not stretchy like the 1080 version 10. It is what I would just call a standard mesh upper, which works quite well. I certainly found it nice. And then of course we've got the nice big Saucony logo welded on over the top there. This shoe uses Power Run midsole here. As you can see, it goes from heel all the way to toe. It's not like a two-piece midsole, it's just one piece from heel all the way to the toe. Power Run midsole with this faded blue pattern. Not sure about that. Faded blue pattern that goes along the outside, but nothing there on the inside. And then of course we get on to the outsole. Doesn't look to be anything fancy there, just a couple of bits of orange rubber in some of those, what I'm guessing they're calling hard wearing areas, but on the whole just looks to me like exposed Power Run midsole on the bottom there. But as unlike some shoes, I can foresee this lasting the distance, a little bit like the Beacon version 2, where it has that fresh foam exposed at the bottom. It's quite a firm midsole. It's not something like the Hoka Rincon where it looked to degrade relatively quickly. This looks like it's going to stand the test of time, which is absolutely great. So that's the shoe in a nutshell from a technical perspective, but how do we find it on the run? As I said, we took this thing out for 6 miles and I wanted to put a little bit of speed in there. It's the first run since my wife has had our son, so I was a little bit tired, I'm not going to lie, and I didn't want to do anything too strenuous, but I thought what I would do at the end of the easy run is chuck in some strides to see how it felt when we picked up the pace. So when I got to 5 miles, I did from 5 to 5.1 miles in a stride, you know, picking up the pace, around 4:15-minute miling, and then from 5.1 to 5.2 eased off, 5.2 to 5.3 stride, so on and so forth. So we got 5 strides done in the shoe plus 5 easy miles, and I've got to be honest with you, I was left a little bit underwhelmed with this shoe. There was a lot of, well, quite a bit of hype from what I can see surrounding this shoe. Quite a few of you have recommended this thing to me. I did listen and I did want to try this thing out. It's important for me this year to try out as many brands as I can and not get too caught up in the hype train of one particular brand, because for me, I just want to experiment in 2020 and find out which brands really work for me and then narrow down as time goes on to the brands that really work with me and my gait cycle. For me personally, as I said, I found it quite underwhelming. I found it quite a sloppy shoe. I mentioned in the technical side of things that there is this gusseted tongue. They don't call it a gusseted tongue. They call it something else, but it is meant to secure the lockdown on the midsole, and I just didn't find it. It's a very awkward shoe. It looks to me like a very bog standard trainer. I'll tell you what it felt like initially, and I know they're not in the slightest, but it felt like just wearing a pair of Vans. There was no kind of skateboarding shoes. There was no kind of, it doesn't feel contoured to my feet in the slightest. It just felt like I was putting my foot into a bog standard shoe that gave me no particular support, no hugging, just a very loose and sloppy fit. But again, if you've got wide feet, I did have a bit of, I didn't get any rubbing, but my pinky toe, my little toe was right against the edge of the material there. It's probably one of the narrower shoes that I've tried. Didn't cause me any issues on the run, which is great. But just bear that in mind, if you do have really wide feet, then this probably won't be the shoe for you. And of course, I said in the beginning, the laces annoyed me a little bit because they were quite short, so I couldn't really do them as tight as I wanted to. Having said that, they didn't come undone. There was no sloppiness there. It was just the general overall feel of the shoe. So I was really hoping that when I got to the striding part of the shoe, that this shoe would open up, because it really felt like the Power Run midsole felt a little bit like the Beacon version 2 midsole, the Fresh Foam midsole. Not the Fresh Foam X in the 1080, but the Fresh Foam. Quite firm, yes, responsive, quite nice, but it was certainly on the firmer side. It didn't really feel like it was comfortable. I felt quite awkward running easy in it. But lo and behold, when I picked up the pace in those strides, and I was running 4:15-minute miles in those 0.1 of a mile sections, it kind of came into a world of its own, and I could kind of see definitely where this shoe is marketed towards. And certainly for something like a 5k race, I think this would be actually quite a good shoe. It certainly felt like the second my cadence picked up, the second my stride length picked up, and I was just working a little bit harder, the shoe suddenly started to work for me. It was a shoe that in the beginning, kind of I felt like I was fighting when I was running easy, but when I picked up the pace in it, it felt suddenly very natural. So I think for me, what's going to be really interesting is taking this thing on the speed test and the long run test. And I'm foreseeing it already. I'm putting my predictions out there now. It's going to be absolutely fantastic on the speed run, but I think it's going to struggle on the long run, because if I do a normal long run, a relatively steady to easy pace, it's just going to feel just like it did on that trail run. But I think if I do a long run that has a bit of interval work in it, it might do a little bit better. But I think the key for me is there how long I can run in this shoe, and then how my feet feel at the end of it. Like the Beacon version 2, after 2.5 hours in that shoe, my feet felt they were on fire, felt so beaten up. I'm really hoping that with the firmness of this midsole, this doesn't feel the same. So that's kind of where I'm thinking. That's my predictions for the shoe. But in terms of the overall feel and fit, it's okay. It's the first shoe I thought to myself, actually, I'm not that fussed whether I take this thing to 100 miles or not. But I'm hoping that after I've done a speed test later this week, it's going to come into its own a little bit more, and then it will slot into the rotation nicely. From first impressions, I cannot foresee me using this on any easy days whatsoever, or even potentially a long run, but we'll wait for the long run test. But I certainly can see myself using it for those interval days, because for me it did feel nice and lightweight, and it certainly did feel snappy, and it did the job that I wanted it to do in that area. But you know, sometimes when you buy a shoe and you just feel a little bit shortchanged, at the price at the moment, you can get it for £103 on sportshoes.com, which is a really, really reasonable price. And I'm guessing for those of you with smaller feet, it will probably fit you a little bit better. I don't know if just because of the size of the shoe and the way that it's grown with the material, I don't know, it just feels very sloppy around my foot. But those are my first impressions. Don't want to be negative, but I've got to be honest, that's really key for me to convey that to you guys. But I know a lot of you love this shoe. I know a lot of you run in this shoe. A lot of you have recommended it to me. So make sure you leave a comment below if you have run in this shoe, what you think of it, and of course how you are using it moving forwards in your training. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you stay tuned for the speed test and the long run test video, which will be out at some point next week. I'll give you a little bit more in-depth information. I'll put a little bit more mileage into the shoe by that point. And yeah, hopefully have a bit more answers for you then. So if you enjoyed today's video, guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends. Of course, do consider subscribing to the channel for weekly running content. And as always, I'll see you on the next one. Until then.